What's up? I'm Tyler.
And I'm Dakota.
And this is the Bourbon and Business Podcast,
where we interview successful businessmen and women to let you in on why success doesn't have a single formula to follow.
We also have a little bourbon tasting along the way, because why not?
Why not?
So guys, please enjoy this episode and let us know your thoughts at Bourbon and Business Podcast on Instagram.
Coming to you from the Bourbon and Business Studios here in the Capitol Club in downtown Jackson, Mississippi. I'm Tyler.
And I'm Dakota.
And this is the Bourbon and Business Podcast.
Take two. My
Take
mic was
two.
muted the first time.
Yeah,
so
he don't know what he's doing. I'm the tech guy.
Obviously.
But tell our listeners about the Capitol Club here.
This is the premier event space in downtown Jackson. They've got daily lunches, a parking garage, networking events and opportunities, regular events and opportunities. They've got a beautiful event space up here on the 20th floor now. Their rooftop bar is fantastic. You got to check them out.
Yeah. If you're not a member of the Capitol Club, you're missing out. You need to go join. And you want to introduce our guest to us?
I do. Today we have special guest, Melissa Perlman, founder of Amansala. Melissa, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yep, glad to have you. And what are we sipping on?
We are sipping on Slow and Low. Shout out to my boy Wilson for turning me on to this years ago. It is rye whiskey, rock candy, raw honey, aromatic bitters, and navel orange.
So I like this a lot. Typically don't like a sweet whiskey, but this I do like. I'm gonna have to come in at a 8.2 on it.
Okay.
Very good. I think you said $30 for this bottle, so
Yep.
it's a cheap bottle, especially for what you're getting in the bottle.
Yeah.
And if you want a bottle of it, you need to pick it up at Cheers Vineyard in Gluckstadt, Mississippi, the premier wine and spirits place.
One and only.
In Mississippi. So, well, Melissa, we appreciate you coming on this morning. We'd like to take this time, kind of give our listeners where you're from and then how you got to the point of starting your business.
Well, I was born in Toledo, Ohio, and moved to Phoenix when I was around 5. Had a pretty typical childhood, grew up, went to college in State University of Arizona. After college, I took off and I went to Tokyo for 6 years, lived in Japan, and got sort of a travel bug. You know, in Phoenix, we didn't have a beach and we didn't travel much. And so I'm living in Tokyo and I had to do a visa run, they called it, to get out of town every 6 months. And I discovered all these amazing beaches in the world, like in the Philippines and Thailand and Bali. And so after my 6 years, I moved to New York, thinking that everybody should experience New York for a little bit of time. And then after 6 years there, 9/11 happened. And like many people, I was thinking, what am I doing in New York? And do I have to be in New York? And I came up with this idea of what I thought would be a pop-up and just kind of do it for a few months. And it just grew and grew and grew to being something that I've been doing for over 23 years.
Wow.
That is fantastic. I was nodding along like I knew what you were talking about, but I've never been to any other beach other than like Florida and the Mississippi coast. So I did go to an LA beach one time, but that's about it.
Well, tell us a little bit about your pop-up idea that turned into this career of, you said, 23 years.
Well, I'm sitting in New York and, you know, it was right after 9/11 and I was at a gathering and people were talking about where they were going to escape to. And a lot of people have houses in the Hamptons or in Connecticut or places outside of the city. And I'm not from New York, so I didn't have one of those places. But I started to think, hey, maybe I could go to this place, Tulum in Mexico, which I'd been to on holiday and fell in love with, and make my escape over there and live on a beautiful beach. So I went home from this party and I sat down at my computer and I made a homemade website. Like it just sort of came to me, this vision of a place. And I put together a vacation with a purpose that would send people home looking and feeling better than when they arrived. And put together with borrowed pictures from other people's websites, a whole concept for a vacation that didn't exist, you know. And then I packed up my studio apartment, filled it with all sorts of pretty things that I thought I'd need to make a hotel, and lugged them down to Mexico. And then one of those buses you see in a movie with the chickens and all the and my huge duffel size bags and lugged them down and checked into a little cabana where the guy was waiting with a candle because I didn't have lights down here then. He literally said, "Do you need some help?" And I had a dictionary that I didn't leave home without. And I said, "Yeah, apoyo, help me." And we opened up the back of the little taxi, and there were these huge bags. And he was like, everybody had a backpack on. It was a bunch of backpackers or hippies. And he helped me drag my huge bags into my little room. And that's how I landed the first night. And the next day I woke up and I started walking down the beach with my, idea of opening this, place where people could come and think about their life and hit a reset button, and wound up walking and walking and walking. And there really wasn't anything. I tried to talk to the couple of places with my dictionary and say, we could sociar, we could become partners and remodel our. And, the first guy was like, my wife just remodeled. And I'm like, oh, okay, muy bonito. Kept walking. And then basically walked until I couldn't walk anymore. And it was getting a little dark. And on the way home, there was this place that had this sort of music coming from it, and there were some light bulbs jacked up in trees. And I walked back there, and there were these guys taking an old, dilapidated palapa. I don't know if you know what that is. It's a thatch roof hut that they use in the jungles to build, and they were restructuring one and putting cement on it, like to make it a second level beneath. And I walked up with my dictionary with a big hola. They all looked at me and I said, "Hey, you need a ventana." And I took a stick and I'm like, "Hey, you need a ventana." And they, "Okay, está bien." And they knocked out a window. And then they handed me a beer, not a bourbon, but a beer. And now I've got the music's playing. I've got a beer. I got another beer. And now I'm the foreman of the job. And I'm like, "You need to put the ropas to close." So I'm like, "A closet, and move the door over here." And I'm basically with these guys designing a room. And then the owner shows up and he's like, "Who are you?" And I'm like, "Who are you?" And we shake hands and I'm like, "How much would this cost to rent for a night? What about for a week? What about for a month?" And basically right there on a napkin, 10 beers later, we had a little contract going on. And the next day formalized it in the only lawyer in town's office. And that became Amansala, which is the name of my hotel. And it's a
Wow.
script word that means peaceful water. So Aman means peace and Sala means water.
Tyler knew that already, but
Yeah.
thank you
Yeah,
for explaining it
Yeah.
to me.
that's from all
That
this
has to be one of the most amazing stories that we've heard to date on
I
the
don't,
podcast.
yeah, I've never heard a story like that. That sounds like you need a movie for sure. You need to keep the rights to that.
So tell our listeners a little bit. So what was the thought process like? I mean, did you have any fears when you went down there? Like, hey, that this may be a crazy idea. Like, obviously, it's worked out well for you, but like, I mean, you just hopped on a plane and stroll into Mexico and say, hey, I'm gonna walk around and see if I can start a business.
And I'm not gonna lie, if I got out of my taxi and saw a dude with a candle standing there and he was like, "Hey, I'm here to help you," I'd be like, "No, I'm out. I'm headed back."
Most people would have been out at many phases along this journey. So that's not so unusual. But you know what? I've never really had the fear of failure gene. Like, I don't think I was born with it. I always think in the worst case scenario, what's the worst case scenario? I'm like, I'll go home. I'll go back to New York. What's the worst case scenario? I lose a little money. What's the worst case scenario? And I guess I never think of the worst case scenario, like, but but yeah, I made a very rough business plan on a piece of paper. Like, okay, if I had this many rooms and it cost this much, and sometimes ignorance is bliss. And I think in this case, not overthinking it and not putting it too much into a structured business and just thinking, what's the worst case scenario? I'll go home and I'll have a great adventure. And it allowed me a lot of freedom. And, I took that place there where I was designing the room and signed the contract. And the next day, it was my place. And I thought, where could it start here? It was like there was nothing. It was like a dilapidated couple of old thatch roof huts on the beach. And I went to the neighbor, which was an old man with a beard, like out of a movie. And he said, where do you get the electricidad? The luz, and I'm with my dictionary. And then he tells me planta, planta. And I think he's telling me about plants. And I'm like, what's that? Well, that means generator. I'd never heard the word generator before. I'm like, well, what is that? So I had to get a little generator. And then I had to figure out how to get the water. Oh, you need a pozo, a well. Well, how do you get a well? A guy has to come and go to the ground.
Right.
So I've got a well and a little generator. And people started to show up. They heard, the gringo, the American, was hiring. So all these guys show up. And I'm like, okay, where do I start? Like, I would call the doorman in my building in New York to hang a picture. So I didn't have a lot of experience in being the foreman of a construction site. But I became one, and I had a little notebook, and I'm like, okay, you're the wood guy, you're the electrician, all right, you're the cement guy, and almost everybody had the same name. Like everybody was Jose or Manuel. So I was confused who was who. So I'm like, okay, who's this, who's that? And I tried to keep track in this little book, and I would hitchhike a ride to town because there was one truck that would come every day to deliver ice to the few places that were down there. And I would wait for him on the road and get in the ice truck and go to town and take money out of the ATM. And I would write down, okay, I took out this much. And I went down there after being there for like 3.5 months, and it said insufficient funds. And I'm like, uh-oh, now what am I going to do? So I had a place that wasn't quite finished, but it was coming together. Sometimes the workmen would finish the job, sometimes they wouldn't come back, but it was getting done, and it was coming along. And so at the same time, I'd hitchhike to town to take money out, rent a big clunky old computer, because this is before people even traveled with laptops. Would rent, they had a little phone booth where you could put coins in this phone, not on like a phone booth exactly, but like a coin based phone. So I would put money in there and call up like Vogue magazine and say, can I speak to the travel editor? Can you hurry, please? How do you spell your name? Okay, I'm going to send you an email. Click, because I didn't have any money. And then I would go to the clunky computer, which you could rent for 10 pesos for 10 minutes, and I would send him a pitch. And I did this, like every day for weeks and weeks. And then one day I went in there, hitchhiked to town, opened the computer, and there were a bunch of emails from people who wanted to come to my program. So what I did is I came up with this vacation with a purpose and called it Bikini Boot Camp. So a 6-night program to rejuvenate yourself from the inside out through a combination of yoga, fitness, healthy eating, and beachside pampering. So it resonated with a huge market of women mainly. And they wrote about it in New York Magazine, and I didn't even have a place. So all these women started to write in that they wanted to sign up for Bikini Boot Camp. So I sat there at the computer. I thought, well, what do I tell them? And so what I told them is, unfortunately, we're sold out until next October. But if you sign up now and you pay, then you can reserve your space. So people were like, okay. So they all started to pay. And then with their money, I went and I finished my construction.
Well, that is a phenomenal story. So, I mean, there are two type of people in this world. So one person is always going to see the negative in things, and then of course you're going to have the optimists, people that say, hey, whatever whatever obstacle I face, like you said, I'm going to be able to overcome this. And worst case scenario, if I don't overcome it, I'm still alive. I still have my life. It's not the end of things. And I think to be a founder of a business and someone that's going to, take a business to the next level, you have to have that optimism. You have to have the ability to see the vision like you did, but also you have all the naysayers that say, hey, this is a terrible idea, and you're able to tune all that out and just move forward with it. Where did that ability come from? Is that something that you just naturally, have always been that way, or was it something that you learned over time?
That's a good question. I guess we don't really know how we become who we become. It's such a cumulative thing from our childhood and onward, and little experiences that have touched us along the way. But my mother used to tell me that she hoped there was a small country in need of a dictator when I grew up. So I think that's a little testament to my character. I think I was stubborn, and I wanted to do things my way. And when I went down there, I didn't really seek anybody's opinion. I just thought this is going to work, and I'm going to be happy here on this beach. And I like to travel, and I like to like wellness, and I like pampering, and I like all the things that were a combination of what I put together into this business. And I just knew that, I always think, if you'll like it, why won't other people like it? Like when you guys started your podcast, you probably thought, hey, we like bourbon and we like to chat with interesting people. Why won't other people like it? And so I sort of went in with that mindset as me as the consumer, and I thought I'd like it for sure. So that's how I I sort of started it.
No, that's fantastic, and I love the comment from your mom there. And I think we're learning more and more about mental health, and especially like personality traits and where they come from, and our kids. And we used to tell kids a lot like, oh, don't be bossy, don't be this, don't be that. Whereas like nowadays we kind of communicate it as more of leadership traits, and so we're like, hey, like let's nurture that a little bit. Like, yeah, maybe they could tell them things in a little bit different way, but they're able to communicate, and they're able to communicate a want in a way that they see this game or project or whatever going forward, right? And instead of, some people are born leaders, some people are born worker bees, some people become worker bees and then, evolve up into leaders, and that is completely, just different based on the child. But I think that's great that your mom used to tell you that, and that you actually took that and ran with it, and you're like, you know what, I think I will. I'm going to
Yeah.
go be my own thing and do my own thing.
Yeah. And I think, entrepreneurs in general have that trait where they're going to see it through till the end. It's in their
Yeah.
blood. They're living it. They're breathing it. They're waking up with it, going to sleep thinking about it. And that's really what you need as an entrepreneur to get something off the ground, because it's not easy. You're going to have a lot of obstacles. And especially for me, in a macho dominated society, in a different language, in a different country, in an industry that I wasn't familiar with.
Yeah. And I think, one thing, a big misconception with entrepreneurs is a lot of times people think it's about the money. The money, yes, the money is nice. It's nice to have money to do things, but it's more about the journey, the dream,
Oh,
the vision.
100%.
An entrepreneur is not sitting there thinking what I have in my bank account. They're like, hey, how can I expand this dream? How can I continue this? That is the fuel for them. And so I think, a lot of people, when they see founders and entrepreneurs, they think, oh, they're money hungry. And that's, for most that I've met and known, that's not the case. So
No, it's something so much deeper than money, than financial gain. That's almost like the side note.
right.
If you do something with integrity that you love and you put your soul into it, then a side note is you should be rewarded and make money, but it's not the driving force, But I came up with this concept before there were these wellness retreats that are all over the world now. I was really the first wellness retreat of its kind, and really pioneered a whole community. Toulouse was a little town off the beaten track that people hadn't really heard about. And then through my program, a lot of people started to hear about it. It was written up in every magazine, and a lot of celebrities started to come down. And, this was a little town in Mexico that people didn't really visit. So I think that also, being able to have the insight from traveling around to these other places and see, wow, this is an undiscovered paradise. That also
Yeah.
helps grow.
Well, and one thing you did that I think kind of really accelerated your growth probably early on is you had a niche market, something, you said it was for wellness and yoga, and then you had like this fan group that basically said, oh, this sounds amazing. I've never heard of anything like this. Was that something intentional, or was it kind of it just happened that way?
Well, I did it with myself as the consumer in mind. And so I think it resonated with women, who are close to my demographic,
Right.
And I really think the programs that we do are called Bikini Boot Camp, and then there's another one called Restore and Renew. They're both identical, except Bikini Boot Camp is more cardio. And the funny thing is, a lot of men come to Bikini Boot Camp now.
I was going to
because
ask, could Tyler go?
as long as he wears a bikini, yeah,
That's
Okay.
all right. Perfect.
and he
He
brings
loves
the
that.
bourbon,
Okay.
then he can come. He'll be
Yeah, I
the
don't
life
think
of the
anybody
party
wants to
down
see
there.
that.
But so we do these two programs, and I think before it was sort of like not that many people took time out to do vacations with a purpose. And now it's more acceptable. People are like, hey, I need to check out. I'm working really hard. I need to reconnect to myself. And so we provide that place where people can come and reconnect to themselves, take walks, go by themselves. A lot of people are like, God, that's weird to take a vacation by myself. But it's actually an amazing thing when you're coming to a place where you're going to have dinners with other people and you're going to be meeting, interesting people. It's actually kind of a relief that you don't have to talk about your old stories with somebody that you've traveled with 20 million other times. So we provide a safe place where people can come and just, hit the reset button.
Yeah.
And I think everybody needs to
You
do
learn
that.
you learn about yourself too. You learn what you're able to do in an environment like you said that's not. And I know like this isn't anything against like people traveling with their significant others. I think that's fantastic. I love traveling with my wife. But when you go somewhere by yourself, it's like you're not. There's nobody else's opinion that you're thinking about because you don't know anybody else. So you're like, I could care less what any of these other people think, right? Whereas, if you're traveling with somebody that if I'm traveling with Tyler somewhere, I'm not going to make a fool of myself by saying something dumb. But I mean, I might anyway, but Tyler's probably going to do that for us. So, his opinion is going to matter in how I present myself and what we do though, because usually there's like a purpose for why we're going there. But if you're going somewhere by yourself, you don't have any other opinions to worry about except your own.
And you don't come with any old baggage. You don't have to talk about old stories, and you are who you present yourself to be at that moment.
Yeah.
And a lot of, things that you see right now on Instagram or, about self-help is all about manifestation or just sort of creating who you want to be by breathing it and talking it and speaking it. But a lot of times when we're with people that we know really well, we're dragged into past conflicts or past histories and things like that.
Mhm. Well, you touched on a good point. One big thing for me that I'm an extrovert. I love to meet people and talk to people, but really, where when I go to recharge, I like to go away by myself, even if it's as simple as going to eat dinner by myself. Like there are times I'll just like to sit with myself, and I think it is
That's
it's
kind of narcissistic, man.
well, I think it's a pretty cool thing to be able to step away and
No,
like
yeah.
you don't have all these like I guess this box that you're in because everybody that knows you sees you as this person
Yep.
that does this and like this is who you are. And you kind of have to keep that image up. You're like, okay, well, yeah, this is who I am. This is my business. This is what I do.
Reputation. Yep.
But you're able to step away with people that don't know you. You don't have to be anybody other than you,
Yeah.
which is a kind of a freeing thing.
Well, it's amazing. It's like an onion, all the layers sort of start to peel off, and then
Yeah.
you get the essence of the person. So you have people that might normally in a city be carrying, a Gucci bag and, members of clubs that others aren't, or, or somebody who's a school teacher doesn't have the same income or the same clothes or whatever it might be, or somebody that just got divorced. You have all these different people. But you know what? They're all in their like casual clothes. They're working out. They're having this new experience together. And you really see who they are, not what they have or not what they pretend to be or not what society's put them in, a pen to be. So it's really amazing to watch the layers peel off and just see the beauty in each and every person that comes through. And I feel so grateful that I'm in a job where I get to see people go home feeling and looking better than when they arrived.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about, so you told us kind of how the business started, how, you were in basically, I guess, one, two, or three buildings there. I mean, what does the business look like today? What does the resort look like 23 years later?
Well, that's another story. The resort where I put the window in and I restructured that, I wound up building 16 rooms. So first I had four. There were two old structures that had one platform room, and then I built two beneath it. And then I thought, you know what? I'm going to roll the dice and I'm going to build another structure. And I thought, oh shoot, I shouldn't have done that. I wasted all my money. And then the day before it filled, new people signed up, and it was kind of like build it and they will come. And I kept doing that until I had 16 rooms. Then trouble in paradise. The landlord decided not to renovate the lease and came and sort of took me out guerrilla style. And I wound up renovating a whole nother property down the beach, which used to belong to Pablo Escobar.
Wow.
they were these abandoned villas that I used to walk by, and I acquired them from the government and renovated them. And that's a side note. I'm going to get back to that later. But the actual place where I am now, I started from scratch after the original place. And it turned out to be a blessing in disguise because I had found a piece of property and started paying it in small payments over the course of many years. And as I guess luck or fate would have it, turns out that I'm in a location of Tulum that's actually quiet. It's really convenient. There's a new road that opened up, and I was able to build with more expertise than I had in the original structures. So the resort of today, Amansala, has a collective of around 85 rooms, and it's beautiful. It's, I like to use the phrase authentically Tulum because it keeps all the authenticity of what Tulum is about, which is the antithesis of one of the big all-inclusive resorts, which have their moment in place and they're good for certain demographics. But it's built with all local wood from the jungle, local handicrafts, really beautiful, very upscale, made with a lot of Mayan stone and polished concrete walls, and very stylish and minimalistic. And a lot of common spaces for yoga or for gatherings. We host a lot of retreats. So that's a whole nother business where people don't have to be yoga teachers to have a retreat. Maybe they're about mindfulness, or maybe they teach about relationships or parenting or whatever it might be. And so we host tons of retreats down there. So we've set it up with these big communal rooms and spaces for people to gather, and have also at the same time places where people can go alone and read a book or chill out in a hammock or just do whatever they want to do.
That's
Really
awesome.
cool. Really cool. Well, tell our listeners, if someone's listening to this and they like what you have going on there at your resort, how do they connect with y'all and, maybe book a trip?
Sign up for Bikini Boot Camp.
Well, you go to our website, which is www.amansala.com, and it's spelled Amansala. And you'll find on there, it says retreats, and there's all sorts of information. We're also on Instagram at Amansala Tulum, Tulum. And it's really an amazing vacation. We send people home looking and feeling better than when they arrived in every sense, mind, body, spirit, tune up. So yeah, if you're looking for a place to go by yourself or with a sister or a mother or a partner, it's a great vacation.
Love it. Tyler will be there next month.
Yeah.
In a bikini.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Dakota, give us
That's our VIP membership for the Bourbon
Yeah.
Business Podcast members.
give us your thoughts on the bourbon.
I thought it was slow and low. I thought it was very sweet on the nose, a good spice flavor. I think the bitters really added some depth to it because without it, I think it would have been too sweet. It just wouldn't have been that whiskey kick. So I'm gonna land at 8.7.
8.7.
Yeah, this was a great whiskey though. I would buy again. Highly recommend. I think it'd be really, really good on like a fall night. Maybe not in Mexico, but in Mississippi where we are on a nice cool fall night, this would be really good over ice.
Yeah, we might drink some tequila in Mexico.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
And I'm mainly a tequila drinker, but I'm like actually craving a nice glass of that slow and low right now.
Well, it's very good. Well, we'll
Yeah.
land at an 8.4 for the slow and low. And Melissa, we appreciate you coming on. And I guess you've already told our listeners where they can find you at.
This is the point where you say to all our listeners, however you stream this podcast, please go give us a like and a rating, and we will see you next week.
We'll see you next week.
Hope you guys enjoyed this episode.
If you have any feedback or would like to be featured, reach out to us at bourbonandbusinesspodcast@gmail.com.
Or find us on Instagram at Bourbon and Business Podcast.
Thanks again for listening.
Follow us for more content and info on the next episode.